T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Starfleet Lock and Safe YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be about this bank teller safe. Now, this came out of a bank here locally, and if you'll notice, the top half of it mostly is rusted. This is a steel safe, bare metal, that has a lacquer coating over it. These were used a lot by banks for years and years and years, lots of years. Well, this particular one has been in a bank for a long time, and you can tell where the tellers have used the top corner mostly as a way to grab a hold of this safe to open and close the door. That can be dangerous. Somebody could catch your fingers, but it still doesn't stop them from doing it. All the oils in the hands eventually wear out the lacquer finish. The lacquer finish gets worn out and it starts to rust, and it rusts from the underside of the lacquer. So there will be a thin coat of lacquer still there, but it's open enough that the rust can work its way through. So we're gonna fix this up and get rid of all that rust, make this thing look pretty again. And that's today's video. So here you see me sanding with a sanding block. I'm not trying to get the rust out. What I'm trying to do is break up the lacquer a little bit so that I can come back with a lacquer thinner and strip the rest of the lacquer off. By using a sanding block, we lightly scratch the lacquer and allows the lacquer thinner to get into the pores easier and help remove it. Here I'm pouring lacquer thinner directly onto the safe door. I'm going to use paper towels because we're going to throw them out when we're done here. What I'm doing is I'm scrubbing the face with the lacquer thinner, trying to remove any last little bits of lacquer that might be left on here. Scratching the surface with the sanding pad helped. Now we're getting in there and removing all that extra lacquer. And you'll see me flip the rag over a little bit right about here. All that green gray stuff, that's the actual lacquer coming off of the door. Now I've switched to a sander. We're going to start out with a 50 grit belt, and then we're going to move on to 80 and I believe 120 before I'm finished. This takes a while, so we're going to shorten this video up by just putting it on high speed and getting through this. Just watching somebody sand is kind of boring. I'm done with belt sanding here, and we've moved back to using block sanding. In this case, we're using sanding blocks that have been wrapped in emery cloth. And we're probably using about 100 grit emery cloth on here, and we're going to go over and over and over this door, making sure that there's no rises in the metal, that the grain is going the correct direction on everything. There's no major scratches in the door. The biggest thing is making sure that if there are scratches, that they match the grain of the door. We're going to eventually lacquer this thing again, so we want to make sure everything looks good before we do that. So enjoy more sanding. I will speed it up for you so you don't have to look at that for a couple hours. So when I did the lacquer removal, I forgot to do the edges of the door. So here I'm using an emery mesh cloth that comes in strips. It's used in the automotive industry quite a bit. And what I'm doing is I'm using that emery cloth mesh to remove all of the lacquer and the rust that's on the sides or the edges of this door. We've got 4 edges to do. The bottom edge is not so bad, but the other 3 edges for some reason are really bad shape. So I'm going to go through and clean them up, and we'll speed this up so you don't have to watch that, as it takes a long time. And remember now, there are 4 edges on this thing, so We got some time involved here. An old metals refinishing guy taught me this trick. If you're gonna lacquer metal, you have to prep the metal before you actually lacquer it. That means clean it, wipe it down, but come back with a propane torch or something really hot to take the moisture out of the metal. If you don't do that, you'll end up seeing little brown spots underneath the lacquer finish. And that's actually moisture in the metal that's coming up under the lacquer. So, here you see me using a propane torch to pull the moisture out of the metal. And you can actually see it foaming up or vaporing up along the edges of the heat. And finally, we put the lacquer finish down. I'm using a spray can here. This is clear lacquer. I've gotten it from local hardware store. And we cover the whole thing with a couple of layers, and that is all we need to finish this off. And here's the door put back on the safe. You can see some of the parts on top that I'm going to use to finish the door with a new lock, a new keypad, and adjust all of the bolt works. And there you have it. If you enjoyed this video, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel and click on the like button. You can comment if you'd like, and please share all you want. Thanks for watching.